Top right-hand side of the map, we have the blue Terran player from Team Liquid. He is young Clement.
The French, though.
The French? What?
You said Clement.
Clement.
I was impressed, but you're kind of doing the croissant.
Oh, I thought I was like, I didn't allude to where he's from at all. Did I say it wrong? Did I get it? Did I? I was like the German. Yeah, no.
Yeah, no, you did it with your accent. So already starting things off very differently. I kind of brought it up towards the end there, towards the predictions, right? Is that Denver was playing a different and aggressive style, so that some of his wins that he got, and that Serral could have looked at that series and been like, okay, what's going to work against Clem here? But a proxy hatch, I think, is still the last on all of our minds when we think of Serral, even though he's not unfamiliar with doing proxy hatches in a lot of matchups. Actually, occasionally he'll just show up and be this very different Serral, and maybe today is one of those days.
Yeah, it's been interesting to see Serral mix in more stuff like this. Like, I don't know, I feel like we've seen maybe a few times in past where Serral has been like, do you know what I'm talking about? There was like this weird period of time where, especially in like ZVP, it just felt like he was all-inning a lot, and people were like, why is Serral all-inning all the time? Like, he's literally the best player in the world. I think he just wins in like a macro game. It feels like he goes through these phases these days where he will randomly go and do weird stuff like this a bit more consistently. So it's been funny to see Serral make that adjustment lately.
Yeah, you're right. There's like a couple of and by a couple of months, I mean like independent of each other. Like a month where he did all cheeses, and there was another month down the road where he was experimenting with really weird builds. But this one I think is kind of just derived from the Denver series, where Clem didn't really have the strongest opener against it. I'm thinking of the right TVZ, I hope. Ronnie and Katz were casting it, and they were talking about how specifically that Clem actually continued building a Reaper, which they were right. Like a Reaper in that situation doesn't actually do, it doesn't help as much as grabbing a couple of Marines, because Reapers produce slower. Obviously, a 50 gas would rather go into something else as well, like a faster factory, and it doesn't go and get its scouting. Now, in this case, we still don't have any scouting, and that's very important because a Roach one is coming down. But that's where the Hellion's going to just go ahead and skedaddle right across the map. But we did have that consistent DPS with a very calm SED pull to clean things up, and that was actually quite a perfect response. It could have been a lot more haphazard. It could have been a lot more frantic because he really did not have scouting at all until this exact moment. But instead, it was actually pretty cool.
Yeah. Serral is going to go for the cancel on that extra bit of walling in there, since he has another queen here ready to block off these Hellions from getting additional scouting. We got an armory on the way alongside all of these Hellions that are being made. A medevac also going to be making its way across the map as soon as it finishes up. So seems like Clem gonna try and go into this Hellbat opening, but I mean, going back to what you were saying, Zombie Girl, we have all these roaches coming on out. How do you feel like that's gonna pair off against it?
That's a good question, man. Like, I'm gonna assume that he clicked on. Well, now I just teased a roach, so there you go. But I was gonna assume that he had clicked on the roach warrants. So that wasn't a double evolution chamber wall off. So, I'm not sure. I don't know. I like this response though. So he doesn't go for cloak. He is just going for a safety banshee, which is not even just it's not safety. It's like what he actually needs in case the roaches come across the map. And maybe just thinking that, one, if he's going to play roaches like mid-game roaches, well, maybe he doesn't make roaches right now. I can still win with this Hellbat push. And then two, I guess it would help if there was a Ling Ravager all in, but it's not that. It is just a Hellbat push, and Serral receiving this, trying to defend with a decent number of roaches. That number isn't quite up there yet, though. And actually, Clem is going to try and jump on top of him.
Yeah, what's kind of awkward is that when you have slow Hellbats and these Marines chasing the roaches on creep, the medevac isn't actually even healing up any of these Hellbats most of the time. They're just walking around. So you see, like, that attack, it's a flub. It's a total flub, Zombie Crow.
Yeah. Again, like, either he thought there wouldn't be enough roaches, or I just, well, regardless, I'm looking at too much. I guess Serral actually getting in there with a scout at the last second really was also not what he was hoping would happen. I don't know. That doesn't really look so hot, but he does save a lot of the army, which is the good news, and he moves on. I'm also a little surprised that he goes for a second Banshee, but perhaps he is thinking of that potential 1-1 all-in, which is what I first mentioned. You know, if he's thinking, oh, it's not early roaches, it's later, maybe I'll catch him off guard. Well, he didn't. And at this point with the 2 Banshees, maybe he's thinking, oh, if it is a 1-1 roach attack, I'll now have 2 Banshees, which has literally saved his life in the past on this map against that 1-1 roach. But it's not. Like, Serral is just going to go back into Ling Baneling. We'll see with the upgrades, but kind of feels like he's just going to go back on Ling Baneling.
Yeah, the Banshees can at least go around and potentially one-shot some workers, but the Overseer finding the Banshees almost immediately and then proceeding to completely ignore the Banshees. At least is going to have some advanced notice of it, so the Queen gets into position a little bit faster. The rest of the Queens are able to start retreating off over here. The Banshee's not finding really a whole lot of damage so far, though. They killed off a Creep Tumor. I don't even know that they actually killed off any drones over there, so it's definitely not the start that Clem was really looking for this game.
I think it's a bit awkward because it is a bit awkward. Like, I think there's a lot of trying to figure out what exactly is going down for both sides, but a little more on Clem. I think Clem's kind of figuring out a bit more than Serral, who seems to be very confident that he is in the driving seat. He defends the hell of that attack with the Roach Warren. Now he goes into actual Ling Baneling, and then he's going to go into quick ultras as well with that infestation pit. So kind of, I guess, just saying that I don't think it's going to be a very strong attack that's going to hit me, and even if it was a decent attack, which it will be a decent attack, I still have Ling Baneling Ravager. Using all the roaches he made to build in Ravagers is a great use of them. And that should be enough. Plus all the creep spread, because, you know, again, this build wasn't exactly super clean. It didn't do a lot of damage, and the Banshees still aren't really helping that much. So there's that kind of decent attack. I don't actually take that back. It doesn't even look that decent here, Dragon.
It doesn't. It is at least hitting at a very awkward time for Serral in terms of the upgrades, where we end up seeing quite a few of these units still being made, and the upgrade's not quite finished over here for Serral, but he gets such a ridiculous wraparound. I mean, this attack didn't last for more than maybe 8 seconds, and the Banshee's gonna get knocked out by the Corrosive Biles as well, so even on the counter swing over here, there's not even gonna be that sustained DPS from the Banshee. I think that this position, it looks like, is good enough that Serral's not going to try and push through the choke point over here, but he's fine with that. He's got a Hive on the way. His 1-1 is finishing up, and he's just going to try and take the trades where he can, but he doesn't have to push in right now.
He does not. It looks very tempting because Clem doesn't have combat shields, and that's the scariest part about that, indeed. But he's not going to push in, and there's really no reason to. So on 4 bases, going into 5, got almost 80 drones. He already has Hive technology and is already producing Vipers, which actually, funnily enough, I mean, I don't even know if he needs Vipers, but yeah, they will abduct the 2 tanks that are now out. It's not a very high number. It's a little worrying. And then, of course, we're going to get ultras as well. It really feels like Serral has won the mental game here, the pacing. But that's not to mean that Clem is out. It's just that Clem never got the momentum that a Terran usually wants more towards the midsection.
Yeah, I think it's a little concerning to me, and I'm hoping it's just like this first game that's like that, because to me, that is Clem's biggest strength, right? As a player, he is the player that seizes momentum, is able to continuously apply this pressure that forces you to play Clem's game. And I feel like this has just been Serral dictating the pace, like you were saying. So, well, Clem is not necessarily going to be playing quite from his comfort zone, but here we go. Serral going to be able to pounce on this army while still on creep before it receives, dives in on top of these siege tanks. Banelings find some okay connections with the tanks, but there's actually not that many left over for the big Marine swell over here. Is this going to be Clem's moment to try and continue pushing on forward? It looks like another round of reinforcements and a Blinding Cloud is going to be able to shut that down.
Yeah, it's a big old no. Clem did not have enough forces to really engage there. Even if he had more tanks, there were Vipers. They were only even involved with that last tank. They were late to the party in the beginning, and that is going to be the end of the game. I feel like that was a game that Clem knew was not going to go his way, but he was going to go through the motions because what if, right? So, and also, like, what if it was a decent attack and then he could play like a turtle game afterwards? But that is never a comfortable position for the Terran. They don't want to just have to give up on pushing and say, I guess late game. 5 years ago, maybe they were saying that, but like Mass Raven era, right? But not now. So I think Clem kind of knew where that game was going, even from maybe the Hellbats, right?
Yeah.
And that's I don't know. I guess you just gotta let that one go, right? You played it out, you did your best, but let it go.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's, there are some Terran players like a Hero Marine or something where I can imagine like, okay, you don't have the greatest start, but you kind of hunker down, you build up and you figure out some other follow-up or something. I feel like it's like a Hero Marine style thing. A Clem style thing is like continue to find more ways to just be aggressive in other ways, like the Banshees and stuff. But even those were not making the damage happen. Like you said, you just kind of move on and say, well, that was unfortunate. I guess let's make sure that that doesn't happen again. If it happens again in game 2, not only will he potentially just be down 0-2, which is a bad spot, but at that point, I'm actually really just worried that Clem his numbers kind of had by Serral at that point. So I think game 2 is possibly going to be the most important game in this series. Like, I think this is going to be the game that kind of decides, like, is Clem just actually ever going to be able to get in the driver's seat for this?
Exactly. If it looks the same, which again is like just Serral's making all the right choices, but the supplies are like okay, that still is actually really bad for Clem. I'm in agreement there. There was a recent Open Cup as well that Clem versus Raynor was the finals, and you would think like that would be an epic matchup, but actually Raynor was just clearly in the driver's seat for like every part of it, and Clem even resorted to some of the very unorthodox builds like Mass Reapers. So I feel like that was some of him hiding his builds, but also can be just like, still, I think he does get frustrated after a certain type of loss. Like he still has that happen to him.
All right, well, down here in the bottom right-hand side of the map, we have from Team Liquid, he is Clem.
In the top left, up 1, he's the red Zerg, Ence's Serral. Okay. Yeah. Serral is just not going to let Clem be the first one to strike, is he?
I really like that. And you know what? It kind of reminds me, I feel like, I don't know that this is 100% true as much anymore. I think Clem has rounded out his play, but there was definitely a period of time, for example, with Raynor, where Raynor was a really good player and he'd be able to take Serral to the edge and even beat him sometimes. But it's not quite like Raynor at the time was this hyper well-rounded player that could just handle everything. And I feel like people started to catch on to that and start like punishing Raynor and finding these openings. And then he rounded out his play. I kind of sometimes feel like Clem is still in that stage where he's learning how to round out his play and deal with all this other stuff. And I feel like getting in his face and just saying, well, you don't actually get to be the aggressor, I'm the aggressor, has been a really, really effective way of doing it.
Yeah, it cuts him off at his source, you know? So this is, I just want to say, kind of just brilliant. So like this might have been the plan no matter what, but let's consider the situation. Clem did not do an SCV scout last game. He doesn't do it again here. He didn't go for a Reaper because he's learned that doesn't really help him as much as you would hope against this proxy hatch. He has no scouting, and he didn't have scouting until he got Hellnanes out in the map last game. Serral, perhaps probably noting that, is just going to actually commit to a 1 base build with this. This could be absolutely brutal. There's not really any reason Clem would go for anything to defend against this. You know, there's nothing saying in the past play from Clem that he's going to go, you know what, safety Cyclone. Like, no, you don't do that unless you scout this.
This is going to be pretty brutal. The reactor and the factory are just now finishing up, but the Ravagers are already being made. To put this into context, Hellions are going to pop out with the Roaches already on the other side of the map, basically.
He's got a 3rd CC on the way if you're Dragon. You ever got a 2nd cast? Like,
well, Zombie Grab, he's going to have a very strong wall if he just lands it over there, because that's about as useful as it's going to get for a bit.
There's no wall! Oh my god. Oh. Is this actually the worst possible? Oh, it is. Oh. It absolutely is the worst possible situation. He's not even building Hellion Spear Dragon. He has 2 Marines.
Complete.
That's it.
Let me ask you this. If you put a Gold League player in Serral's shoes right now versus Clem, do you think they could win?
Yes, I do.
I feel like it actually gets pretty close. I think a Gold League player could win from Serral's situation, potentially.
My god, this was so brutal, and Clem Oh man, he knew. As soon as he saw the Ravagers, he could see it in his face. Gonna try and out micro this. The funny thing is that with 3cc, you know, he could lose a couple of SCVs, right? More than a couple, but I think he would have to lose. He would have to kill every Ravager, you know, and lose max 15 SCVs. Like, and even that's like, I don't know about that one. And he's not doing that. He's not killing the Ravagers.
Guys, it's okay to lose some workers here and there if you start trading out. If you lose your production, you don't actually ever stop the attack. Like, you actually just die. And there it is, Serral, 2-0 here, completely shutting down any hopes that Clem had of bringing this into a later stage game, of getting into his own group. Just love the build order choices there from Serral, and we're going to give Clem a bit of time to kind of recuperate, to rethink how he wants to approach the series before we go into game number 3, guys. Don't go anywhere. Epic conclusion for the series should be here shortly. A very tough spot over here for our young, promising Terran player Clem as he faces off against the Titan Serral in what looks to be a very one-sided series. Serral just seems to have Clem figured out, Zombie Grub.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those things that probably works for a best of 5, and then like the next time you play, you don't do this over again, right? I mean, immediately just saying Clem could SCV scout, and that changes a lot of things on Lightshade. And we know he definitely should have. Dead seem just risky in general not to do so against a Serral who is being a little bit weirder on a map that is infamous for being quite short. but he has to live now being down 0-2. The bottom right of Death Or, can he bring it back? It is Team Liquid's Clem.
And sitting up 2-0 and ready to move on to his rightful place in the winners finals. He is the red Zerg player from Team Ents. It's Serral.
He's got a big brain, Pure Dragon.
He does. That's absolutely true.
Mm-hmm.
Why does he have a big brain in this case?
No, he just has one. I mean, he might have one. We'll see what he does with this proxy hatch again, but his brain was quite big for the last game. That's what I was saying. I mean, he could do a third iteration from this this choice,
definitely gonna
I guess.
Block, right?
Yes, he is going to hash block, but as far as like what he follows up with, I mean, is the big brain tactic to hash block in general? Yeah, maybe. I mean, actually, it was Cats into Muslim, I think, to correct my earlier guess. But I think Cats was really talking about how much he loves the opener, right? And it seemed like to him, it was one of those things that inevitably is going to become more popular. But it's actually not going to happen this time. So that's a nice start there for Clem. I guess you don't have to SCD scout if you deny the block and then can get your Reaper still.
Yeah, drone is still technically alive. It's going to be annoying, you know, taking the gas geyser for a bit, but the command center is still just going to be coming down the low ground. Terran players don't need that second gas that quickly, right? So shouldn't be the end of the world. Although I guess if you go for the Reaper, it takes a lot longer to kill that gas geyser.
Yes, you don't do it, basically. So this is going to force Clem into a weird situation where he could just 3CC, and it's even, I would say, possible he was planning to anyways. Very risky, again, considering Serral is being kind of weird today, but he could have, with proper scouting, he could even be safe with it. So now it's like either you do it, and Serral's like, oh, you're doing it without even getting an Overlord close, or you can't even, I mean, you can actually get your gas in your natural and try and work with that. It's a bit awkward, but it can happen. Clem going for the Marine afterwards, going gas second. I don't know, he might actually still take that. We're gonna wait and see, but I'm feeling the third CC. That rhymes. There it is.
Nice Reaper control, is able to put on some pressure.
Oh, no.
There's the Roach Warren being added on Zombie Grove. And funny enough, even with the Reaper to scout this game, not sure that Reaper's gonna be able to scout out the Roach Warren. Okay,
so here's the thing, right? I was saying it with the gas take, and you're gonna have to go for a third CC. It's one thing to be like, that is the thing, that is theoretically the thing, and then to just show your third CC to your opponent. Like, Serral clearly was going to do this regardless of the site of the third CC. I think he was already planning on it, but this just confirms what he was planning. Big brain, big brain. Clem could have a bigger brain if he thinks this is what Serral's plan is, and then builds onto that tech lab with his factory. If he adds on a tank, I would be so impressed with Pure Dragon. He's not doing it. He's going to have a very late reaction. Please put a tech lab on that. Please.
You know, even if he does, I don't like the positioning of it if he was going to build a tech lab over there, because that's also still just like Ravager Corrosive Bile area, right?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, you could try, like, at this point, the tech lab would actually cause the tanks, I think, go entirely around the mineral line, so you're definitely not wrong. That lack of link speed is a little suspicious right now, and then he sees the roaches. Okay, he's got to react really quickly. You can see him already trying to prime himself, I guess, mentally. The roaches are already across the map, though he just hasn't quite seen them, so hopefully he doesn't think those were the first roaches. They were not. Bunkers are going to go down, but I don't think he can actually hold the main, or the natural base. Does he think it's a Nidus worm? Why is there a bunker going down in the main at that location?
Is he planning to give up the natural? Wait, yeah, that is just very strange.
You build a bunker on the top of your ramp. This is an odd response, but I'm looking towards the bunker at the front anyways. Does Clem actually have enough units to hold this? Like, one thing his build does provide him is a decent amount of bio units, but is that really going to be preferable than having a tank on the high ground right now? SCVs are going to have to be sacrificed to repair the bunker, but it looks like that's going to be good enough. Actually, losing another Ravager means that they really can't bust it down. Target fire on that weak one, target fire on the cocoon, and this is going to be a hold. This series, Pure Dragon, I was gonna end right there, man. I was like, no, don't do this to us. I want the TVC. Really
weird moment there, but I have to say, even at the very beginning of the fight, like the absolute first volley from those Roaches and Ravagers was actually on, not the bunker, but it was actually on the SCVs. So it seemed like Serral was just okay with trading immediately against the workers and just halting repair on the bunker. Not being able to bust through, yeah, that's absolutely going to suck. How do you feel like the transition points are available here for Serral? Because if you look at things, yeah, he might have Babel, Evo, and stuff on the way. He might have a decent drone count, but he doesn't have a lair right now.
Oh, it's actually quite bad for Serral now. So maybe we still won't get a super action-packed game, but at least it won't be a 3-0, right? So Clem is going to have stim, he's going to have combat shields. One thing he doesn't have is upgrades, but then even with Serral having faster upgrades because of that, they're not like that fast, right? Not like super fast. And even make sure to prioritize +1 carapace, apparently, Serral. Cancels his +1 melee. But, and then, yeah, he's going to have medevacs around to just, like, float around the map. And without lair, there really is no consistent anti-air. It's going to have to be perfect queen positioning and maybe a couple of spore crawlers to help out. Creep spread is going to be hard to actually keep on moving forward. As, 5 queens, which actually is not that much. That's 3 on larva duty and 2 on creep spread. And they're probably going to get picked off by the push. Clem, man, he held that actually so well, quite perfectly indeed, and now he's going to reap his rewards.
All right, here's the big move out over here from Clem. Serral's been making nothing but units for a little bit in order to deal with this kind of push out, but like you said, Zombie God, those medevacs are going to be very key over here, because anytime Clem feels like it's not a great engagement, you just do the pickup, lose maybe a few units here, and you should be able to get out. Gotta be a bit careful about those queens, though.
A bit overzealous there, a mistake you try to break the habit of as you get better with Terran, but inevitably still happens. I'll boost into the main, as opposed to saving the boost in case there's like 1,000 missile turrets. So that almost cost him his drop, but yeah, if Clem loses his army or loses his drops, it's going to be like his error. It's going to be for him to get disappointed in himself more than it's going to be really on Serral, because while Serral can have things in correct positions, and Serral is quite a god, this is just not a situation you're supposed to be losing your drops.
Yeah. Well, Serral has finally got up his lair. He's starting up Baneling speed. His own 1-1 is actually going to be finishing a little bit ahead of Clem's, just because he got his Evo chambers very, very quickly after that attack had ended up failing. Serral has not really taken a whole lot of damage so far, and he has been able to also get up this drop overlord, which ironically, the bunker helped a little bit. He had in his main base in an awkward spot, but obviously not going to have still kept that up since he didn't really need it. This is potentially going to put Serral in a nice spot over here if he draws all these units out of position.
Well, it's kind of a conundrum when it comes to dropping against Terran. Generally, their consistent production off of 5 barracks is enough to deal with 8 lanes. So it should only cause a momentary interruption to the micro on the front lines, and hell, that interruption can be the difference of banelings connecting or not. But it shouldn't do much more than that. Centrifugal Hooks is going to finish for the defense, but creep spread is being cleaned up. Oh, barely missing that active creep tumor. But still feeling very confident about his push.
Yeah, looks like on the other side of the map, the 8 Lings are maybe going to be able to snag a siege tank over there, while Lings are also running into the 3rd base, getting a ton of SCVs. This is actually turning into a little bit of a disaster now for Clem suddenly, as he's losing a ton of his economy back at home. He really has to actually make this push in work now. It can't just sit idly by and do tiny bits of damage. It actually has to really do some damage.
Well, the supply doesn't look so bad for Serral, but it is also Ravagers inflating that supply. He's moving off creep whenever he actually truly engage. He does at least take a tank down with him as he disengages with the rest of his banelings. But Clem is going to continue holding this spot. And while that economic loss does seem kind of like a blip in Clem's build and his game, it is going to be recovered fairly quickly. His 4th CC actually just finished.
Oh man, yeah, that's definitely going to help him out quite a bit. And Serral's never, like you said, able to connect with any of those banelings off of creep that Clem is actually holding on to that position with. He unsieges the siege tanks, loads them up into the medevac, and gets ready for a dive over to the main base. Serral has a bit of vision with the overlords over that area, but he still takes a bit of time to react. And during that time, those siege tanks are getting sieged up, and Clem is hitting on the right-hand side at the same time. Splits beautifully versus those banelings. Splits again in the main base, and even if this attack gets cleaned up, and I'm actually not even sure 100% if it will. Okay, it looks like it barely will in the end. Clem is still sagging a free base for all this.
Yeah, excellent use of his position, right? Like if he had only done a direct push, Serral takes that just right engagement and kind of takes over the map elsewhere, which is what his plan was. But by splitting up his army, yeah, it actually was effective. But I will, like, there's a caveat there, okay? Don't think that splitting up your army is always the best idea against Zerg, or that Doom drops are always the best idea versus Zerg. Doom drops put you in a position where you can't micro backwards, and generally they also put you on creep. So I'm actually usually not a fan. But I think that was the perfect opportunity to do so. That was going to be a very difficult split for Serral when it was like 50-50 on left and right. And he has lost not just his hatchery and his economy, but he also took a lot of losses to his army.
And Clem is actually moving forward, cleaning up more of the creep spread over here, checking for bases, looking around, and just seeing, okay, how can I get more damage done over here? How can I ensure that Serral is continuously on the back foot for the entirety of this game? And he's doing a great job of it. This is all of the stuff that Clem really wanted to have happened in that last game or even in the first game, but just never got the opportunity to get to this stage. And Serral is honestly just in a really, really terrible position here. He's going to try and get up that Ultra Cavern, but he first has to defend and deflect this push in. He is on creep, so theoretically gets slightly better hits, but it's not going to be nearly enough. Clem finally puts one on the board.
Nicely done. And that was looking so scary in the beginning. But I guess what happened was that Clem, first of all, was able to produce a Marauder, which, you know, can be questionable if it's not in a bunker. But the bunker finished, the Marauder was there. And then he also had a couple of extra Marines, right? Instead of maybe Hellions, that really wouldn't have helped. He transferred that factory off quite quickly, only using them to scout. So apparently that is holdable. If you get that last second scouts, I do not usually suggest that, you know, to try it at home. I think everyone else dies and no one else gets the scout like he does. But apparently, if you can get that bunker up, get a Marauder in there, and get the SCVs repairing, it's actually a very good defense. Perhaps it would have been different too if it was like a Ling, like a Speedling Ravager attack, but it was just the Roach Ravager. I cannot explain the bunker in the main though. I just like, is there a timing where a Nidus Room be done by that time? Like, and not only would a Nidus Room be there, but that the Nidus Worm player would have sent his roaches to the front instead of having them all going to Nidus Worm. That was odd to me, but I'm going to trust that Clem has faced maybe a Nidus Worm, and that's why he built the bunker.
Yeah, for sure. Well, regardless, Clem being able to take that game, finally putting one on the board again, even if it was off the back of just defending it and deflecting against the big Roach Ravager attack. I mean, even the small things he was doing, like, he denied the hatch block entirely just by pulling that extra worker a little bit earlier on and doing some good micro with the SCV. It put him in a really, really nice spot in a lot of ways, just setting himself up in that regard, not having to deal with that kind of stuff. So I feel like Clem has shown he can make some of the adaptations he needs to. Now the real question to me is, does Serral say, all right, now the real game begins? Or does Serral say, okay, you held that once, can you hold it again?
I feel like he's already said the games have begun. You know, he's pretty brutal in those first two. Anyways, let's see if he can close it out here on Romanticide in the top left. It's still up 2-1. He is Serral.
And down to the bottom right-hand side of the map, we have the blue Terran player from Team Liquid. He is Clem. You know what I always appreciate about Clem, Zombie Grub?
Huh?
Is that there are many players out there that feel like, you know, we're playing remotely, playing from home. I can play in anything. I can play in my, you know, undershirt. I can play whatever clothes I want. Clem always gets dressed up for his matches. He's always proudly repping that TL hoodie or TL shirt or TL jersey or something. I always appreciate that.
Yeah, so it's a really nice jersey too, though. You know,
it is.
I wouldn't mind wearing it. I'm still kind of caught up in that bunker, man. I was like, can he do a drop? But that also requires a lair. Like, that's gonna be what I ask him. Okay, if we get an interview, that's the question I'm asking.
All right.
Anyways,
looking forward to it.
I do hope we get, I guess the game 5, right, to really make the interview quite worthwhile. As it is now, I think there's a lot to talk about the mind games that have gone down. Absolutely. I think Serral came with a plan, with more than one plan and executed all of them actually very well. Even that last game, he lost it, it didn't work, but I would still say that was an excellent addition to the what am I going to do? Which one is it of the proxy hatch that he was threatening? But Clem did an even better version of dealing with that than even I was suggesting. I was saying like SCV scout plus get your Marines and kill the hatchery. He just was like, well, just make sure the hatch doesn't go down. And I'm like, well, that's fair. That's a good call.
Okay, well, this is kind of interesting. So first of all, we had Clem actually go for the SCV scout this game. And there was no drone making its way across the map trying to go for a hatch block at all from Serral. But Serral's also sent his drone down to the low ground location to expand over there after having seen the SCV with his Overlord trying to go for that block on that third base location. So Serral does get his third base down, but it is going to be that forward third base, which, you know, it's not the end of the world, but it definitely can get a little bit dicey sometimes depending on how aggressive your opponent ends up opening.
This is going to be real bothersome. You know, I was just trying to think of the map where you would do this, and it didn't seem like it was like the right call, but it was basically where you would jump off the creep, and I had remembered it on my cast on Monday, and now I've forgotten it again, Fear Dragon. This is so annoying. Anyways, the idea is that in the past, we've had maps where this is a possibility. You're right, it's still dangerous. There's still drawbacks to getting this base, but with it feels like a laser was the one to do it and consistently as well. And now we see Serral doing it in TDZ. I think that it is actually a smart call. One thing that it does, right, getting that creep spread forward is just generally a good thing to really put fear into the Terrans' hearts. Like, look at my creep spread, it's already really far. But in this case as well, on this map, if it's already there, if you're already ready to defend, then the rocks don't get to be abused as much tank push, because that is one of the features of Romanticide that can be really annoying for Zerg, which back to my cast with Wardy, I just kept talking about the rocks, and eventually they did actually help the victory, so I was validated.
Dustin Browder would be proud at the time.
Yeah.
All right, well, we do end up seeing just Stim on the way over here for Clem. He's kind of getting into that usual Terran setup after having added on that third CC, but it's going to be a little bit longer before Clem is able to actually put on any kind of real pressure. Obviously, the two Hellions are here to kind of poke and prod a little bit. Maybe they get lucky and kill off like a creep tumor, but even that should be pretty unlikely. It's really just going to be another minute or two before we end up seeing both these players really start to truly engage each other with the head-on fights.
Nightshade, Fear Dragon. Nightshade.
There you go. I'm proud of you, Zombie Grub.
I'm so happy right now. Thank you.
Did you have to look it up, or did you just remember?
I remembered the name and then I double checked. So
okay.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely not the most important thing right now. The most important thing is that Clem is setting up for an attack. So he has a 3cc build, which means sometimes like, oh, I'm not really going to attack you, or if I am, it's going to be a drop. Don't worry about it. This is a psych moment. This is I am actually going to have a fearsome army because I included Hellions and also Hellbat, so the army finishing up. So that little bit extra, you know, if they have enough Banelings, they have enough Banelings is kind of the way it goes. But if they don't have any Banelings, if they only have a couple Banelings, then the addition of the Hellbats can really make this a brutal hold.
Okay, well, Hellions make their way across the map with all of these Marines. This attack is getting underway. Already finding a couple of these creep tumors. Finds one of the active creep tumors. Doesn't actually get the second one, so it's a little too far south, and he really wants to put on the pressure. A handful of Lings also go for a counterattack. Hellbat's gonna be run past with the Banelings as they just decide to go after other targets, but eventually the Hellbats, two of them go down. All of the Lings and Banelings, for the most part, have been used outside of a few that are on the far back side. And at the end of the day, Clem's attack does kind of get pushed back. So did the Lings. And it's kind of just like a dead trade there for both players.
Bit of a wash, yeah. Serral did have to take that seriously, so look at the drones, not very impressive. But then for Clem, he didn't get to... Wait, I mean, ideally, you actually get them to use all of their Banelings on you, and then you just pounce on the Queens. Because even unupgraded Marines, as long as they got Stim anyways, can do well against that. And he didn't get into the economy either, but he didn't get creep spread, didn't get economy, didn't kill the Queens. Now just has drops kind of going for him. Serral will be able to, I think, push that drone a little bit farther. He's not doing it right now, actually. He's building a lot of lane Baneling, as if he's anticipating a follow-up attack, but we know it's actually not being set up.
Yeah, it's just going to be additional production and stuff being thrown down over here for Clem. Now, Baneling speed is not quite finished yet, and oh my god, yes, EVC is the 4 Banelings if Clem is paying attention, but looks like the Banelings just end up retreating on out. A few Marines also stimming forward to try and handle those. Would have been the funniest slow Baneling run by that I've seen in a while.
Yeah, unlikely to work. You know, the waddling, I think Clem would have noticed in time. So Serral also has upgrades in the lead as Clem finally starts his 1-1. There had to be sacrifices made to actually include those Hellings and the Hellbats, the armory. This is actually, he's going to choose to take the engagement as opposed to just lifting off. Well, it's actually going not so poorly, but that's just because the rest of Serral's army is not quite here. There it is. And also the upgrade just, was that actually kicking in? I don't know, Clem's taking a bit of an aggressive stance on creep, but it is going to end with him picking up, moving on, still not really making any strides to helping his mid or late game. Is a bit my concern, but then Serral, man, it took him a while to get up to the drone count we currently see, and it looks like he's going to go into Hydras, so he could still have trouble against drops. I think he's actually pretty well situated now.
Yeah, I'm also really impressed with how Serral's creep spread has actually been going, because even though Clem has been trying to poke forward with these drops very consistently from a lot of different sides, that creep spread is getting pretty far out there, and just in the sense that Serral will have a decent amount of creep spread in front of him if Clem decides to go for any of those attacks. And with a bunch of Hydras and more Lings being made right now, I feel like Serral's also going to have a decent enough sized army that he might even just try and deny like a 4th base from coming down anytime soon.
Maybe, yeah. Red side, kind of one of those maps that does ensure 4-base play. Maybe not for very long, but hey, you probably get there. So I think Clem's gonna get that up and running. He's gonna choose this middle attack path. He could go to the top right since there's no creep spread, but then he just would be like, all of his army be on the top right. And that can be kind of dangerous in its own right. Situating behind those rocks, Serral might have gotten creep spread here, but he never chose to destroy the rocks. And this is still going to be used by Clem to try and hit this hatchery. The good news is the tanks can actually hit it, but the bad news is it is now a safe retreat path for the Marines.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be nice to have that option. And they are going to try and use it right over here as the siege tanks try and cover the retreat, like you said. Liberator is able to get a surprising amount of damage done, even just killing off some of the larvae over here. Hydra Den potentially going to get sniped off before that upgrade finishes. Serral waiting to the last second to try and dive on in. Is going to be able to save the Hydra Den for now as all of those Marines get pushed back. Baneling's coming in as a flank from the backside. Hit the siege tank rather than hitting the Marines, but the remaining Banelings do get some okay connections over here. At least buys himself a little bit of time while there is also a bit of a Ling drop in the natural.
Yeah, I think a couple of Banelings popped off on Tennessee's, but Tennessee's wasn't enough for that fight, I don't think. Like, the fight went really well for Clem, surprisingly well. That was a good setup by Serral. That was a really good surround, but not only did the Banelings sort of glide down onto that tank, they had that weird moment where there wasn't enough of them, nor enough fodder, where the Marines didn't just DPS them down. And now we're going back off creeps, and now Clem can absolutely either DPS them down or focus fire, as we know he is capable of doing. He's not going to give up this spot, although it is still a tug of war. Serral's really trying to hold on. It feels like it's going in favor of Clem.
Another siege tank shows up, and pretty much all the Banelings have been utilized at this point. 16 Banelings on the way. That Hydra Den about to keel over. Clem doesn't quite go for the finishing blow. He finally dives back in. Gets it. No more Hydras for a bit, but I think that Serral's been mostly focusing on replenishing Lings and Banelings. He's been able to keep a lot of these Hydras alive throughout these fights. He's coming in for a flank from the backside, saying, all right, I'm cutting off your retreat path. The Banelings make some okay connections on a handful of the Marines, but a decent number of them dart over to the right-hand side behind the siege tank, survive. And now Clem is continuing to move forward, now with 5 siege tanks, now with a Liberator also to back him up. He's got so many defensive places that he can actually back up to now.
Yeah, I'm not sure what Serral's going to be able to do here. Run by is a very good thing to try, but it's not that many Lings, so it'll be cleaned up pretty quickly. I think Clem just scanned both bases to A, determine where he's going to harass, but also B, like, how dead are you? How much do I have to really try and keep pushing here? And I think Serral is pretty dead because his army is not looking so hot. There's the tap out. Clem able to bring it back to a game 5 despite that quick 2-0 at the start. This kid is pretty good.
Every time he can make it to that mid-game, he looks extremely strong. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go to a short break before we conclude this series with game number 5. You don't want to miss it. Don't go anywhere. Series is heating up as we move into game 5 of Clem versus Serral. After, honestly, Zombie Grab was a little worried because this is like the series I looked at and I said, this is going to be the series of the day. And then after the first 2 games, I was like, oh no. Oh, no, Zombie Grab. But the last 2 games really have brought it back in my mind a bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's still not the epic, 5 games of macro clashing that we would have maybe hoped for, but it is very interesting in its own right. And we still got our game 5. I mean, Clem is really joining the ranks of Raynor and Serral in just the inevitability, right? That even when it looks like one player is having a terrible day, they still bring it back to give us a game 5.
Indeed. Well, guys, we're going to be starting up here in the top right-hand side of the map. The red Zerg player who I don't think anyone would have expected anyone to say this about this player last year, but his only wins have been off the cheeses today. It's Serral. Immense.
That was an excellent evil twist in the narrative. And once this guy got to play some actual macro games, thank you very much, he is actually winning. That is the blue Terran for Team Liquid, Clem.
Oh, you know what it is? I just figured out the narrative. All right, so you know how everyone always says Serral, especially in his photos, he always looks like that Sith Lord, right? Especially because he's always themed red for some reason. He always gets red as the player pick for some reason. So he's actually Anakin Skywalker. He started off as the good Jedi and all that stuff, turned to the dark side. Now he's just cheesing. And you have the young upstart, basically Luke Skywalker, coming in.
No, Clem is a youngling. Oh no. No, Serral, don't do it.
Even the younglings. I killed them all.
Oh my god. Well, that'll be the narrative if Serral wins this game. If not, that young kid who is Master Skywalker, what do we do? No,
then if Clem wins this, then it's actually Luke Skywalker and he defeats his father.
Yeah, that's much better. You're right about that.
And then he actually redeems Darth Vader. So after this, Serral will go back to macro. Even though it absolutely will have probably nothing to do with that, that's the narrative we go with.
I think we took this analogy a little bit too far.
Well, it's okay, Zombie Grub, because we actually have a normal opening. There was no proxy hatches, no super duper fast, cheeses or anything coming out from Clem's side either. It's actually a more normal opening, kind of like what we saw in the last game.
Yeah. Yes, the most normal opener, I guess, if you kind of include Romanticide's odd positioning, which it's really not odd anymore. I think we'll see that it's consistent attribute to take, but yeah. I do blame the rocks for that last game. No, I was partial to it.
You're not wrong.
It was partial to it, but I feel like Serral actually was awfully close to getting the correct surrounds. Mm-hmm. That one big surround when he came in from 3 different angles and those banelings, there's 20 of them. Unfortunately, never made any connections. I feel like if there was 10 lings in front of them, or 30 banelings instead of 20, whatever, I do think that was a good enough opportunity to clean that up. So it's not that Serral is getting necessarily bopped, right, in the macro games. They're very silly, just, not actual accurate narrative that we're selling here. He's still got a very good head for the macro game. And as we end the series on Pillars of Gold, a comfortable map from the previous season, I think we'll finally get our desire to have a really good back and forth.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that's probably going to be the case too. Now, Clem has definitely shown a wanting in some of these previous games to try and go for those third CCs pretty quickly. This game, he does have that 1-1-1 set up and is going into a Liberator to put on some pressure. And man, if there's a player that I trust with Liberator harass, it would absolutely be Clem. But he's actually getting in here with the Hellions and finding quite a few very clumped up drones. Already getting 5 kills, potentially more, as 1 Hellion still alive. 6 kills before the Reaper and the Hellions go down. Definitely not too shabby.
Yeah, that's kind of not the start that Serral was hoping for. Clem is going to have enough Hellions on the defensive to make sure that any Ling counterattack isn't going to do very much. And Clem is just going to go up into that Liberator. So Serral, he loses some drones. He's adding on a Baneling Nest that he actually doesn't really need this quickly, as his Clem is not doing any Hellbout shenanigans and just has to play the rest of the game out, really. He doesn't have any other options except to just drone again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And he's got to try and hold on against these units with as few defensive units as possible while he can reclaim that drone count lead. Now, doing a nice job zoning out with the Queens against the Hellions, but is he going to be prepared for the Liberator? It looks like that Liberator is going to get caught by Queen in the main. Good reaction time there from Serral. Pulls back that Queen, doesn't take any extra damage from it, and that Spore Crawler should also finish up to help out against Liberator. So Serral not taking any damage from it. Clem at least keeping the Liberator alive for now.
He's pretty good at that.
Yeah.
You know, if the Liberator dies before doing any damage, I'm like, is this Clem? Is this someone else? He's kind of known for it. So Serral is going for still a bit of a faster Spire as opposed to those quick upgrades. I mean, you got the Baneling Nest and then got it out of safety. Last time these guys played in best of 5, it was actually the 5th game on Pillars, I think, that killed him with the Hellbent attack. I was casting it, I don't remember. But, well, perhaps I spoke too soon. He does that out in the Evolution Chambers. So, Clem going to be able to do his push, I guess, whenever he would desire. We'll see if Serral adds on Spire Tech or Hydralisk Tech. I really want to see a Spire Tech, but I'm kind of feeling the Hydras right now.
I mean, that's definitely what he's been favoring so far in the series, but these haven't all exactly been the most normal of games, so we'll wait and see. For now, the creep spread is getting pretty far out there in front of this 4th base location that he's actually going for, and the Hellions still continuing to try and deny creep spread wherever they can, but the Queens are doing a really, really nice job of just pushing them back, protecting those creep tumors, making it more difficult for Clem to eventually get those push-ins. And man, yeah, I love that Serral's also just respecting like how good Clem can be with Liberator Harass. He's getting out the extra Spore Crawlers even later on and just ensuring that he's prepared for this.
Serral's able to afford his 1/1 upgrades, but certainly no technology yet as his gas needs to be built up. All right, this is going to continue on for a little while, I guess. And that's all. Well, that's as funny as that is. This is actually Clem trying to make an open opportunity on the right side, but Serral, I mean, it's not like he's going to move his army to deal with the Liberator. Things don't hit up. So his army is still prepared on that right side. Question is, enough Banelings? I think so. And with Difficult Hooks finishing up, he should be okay. A lot of creep spread as well. Clem's like, yeah, I'm not going to engage with that. He would have had an upgrade lead in like 15, 20 seconds. But if they got enough creeps, if they got enough Banelings, I don't think he want to tango.
Right, well, we're going to end up seeing Clem try and back off over here since, like you said, not exactly the fight that he would want to take right now, but, well, 1/1 is now going to be finishing on up, where you end up seeing the Hydra Den also coming on up, so there's going to be that tech choice there for Serral you were talking about, Zombie Grub.
I just felt it in my bones. Use the Force for your job.
There you go, you know, the Force cares not for which side you're on. It'll aid you.
Well, this is a mistake. I actually think I've seen Clem make this mistake before, so he must have... So armor is A, and then the armor for planetary, I think is... I don't think it's near A. I'm actually forgetting, though, as soon as I try and think about it. But this was supposed to be armor. Is the TLDR there. And instead he's going to have some really beefy command centers.
Okay, well, that is a bit unfortunate. We're going to end up seeing a big push in over here from Clem regardless. Before those upgrades would be finishing up anyways. Going to be able to snag a couple of these Queens with a lot of energy on them. Nice transfuse. Actually keeps that Queen alive even. Very nicely done there by Serral. But Clem starting to clean up a lot of this creep spread as well. Sieging up his tanks in pretty offensive positions. And really does seem like he is actually committing to this attack. But Serral, is he going to go for the wraparound or is he going to go for the counterattack? It looks like counterattack it is.
That's a pretty brutal counterattack. Actually, Hellbat's in really nice position, and then enough army on the right side, just enough really, to stop Serral from getting the run by. Now he's going to go for the surrounds. I mean, I don't think he's really set up for it, so we'll see what those Lings do later on. But Clem has added on 3 barracks Fear Dragon, no 4th command center. He's very dedicated to winning with this. A quite popular build on Pillars of Gold, one that maybe Serral was even anticipating. Hasn't done anything to quite stop it yet, but now this makes me extra worried about that misclick on the armor, Fear Dragon. Like, that was supposed to be armor done. He's gonna go 4th base. He is moving on from this, but it still means that Serral, well, he could actually, his macro's fine. He's taking some okay engagement, start things off. He's actually gonna pull the trigger on the right side as well. Thinking of, he's got this. The tanks are firing in all different directions. Not really getting hit from the Baneling. That one did a little bit better. And Serral's gonna have to retreat back onto creep. That's too many Marines left over.
Yeah, those 2 extra siege tank hits on the Banelings were really, really clutch. Actually managed to kill off quite a few of them. but I think those extra banelings are going to be able to help Serral survive at least a little bit longer over here. There's no more creep spread to really retreat back to outside of the creep spread coming straight from the hatchery here. So really, really important that Serral can hold his ground at this moment. He's going to go for this push, and look at the spread of these siege tanks, though. They're able to get in some really, really juicy connections on this army. Hydra's able to connect and kill off one of the siege tanks. Second siege tank still survives, and Clem is continuing to push in and out of this attack angle. There's a lot of lings over here. It looks like Serral will be able to finally clean this up.
You know, those lings versus marine engagements that looked like it was about to go into. Really wish that Marines had +2 armor, right? As it was, they still had an upgrade lead. Serral actually had a big problem with his gas. He just never had a lot of it. So he's actually even struggling to spend all of his money building enough lings for the minerals that he has banked up. And then he doesn't quite have enough gas to be producing banelings, hydras, as well as further upgrades. So he's definitely not getting to any additional technology. I like what he's doing. I mean, he recognizes that his macro got slipped up somewhere, so he's going to build a bunch of queens, because it's better to have something than nothing. You know, 1,000 minerals, I guess, in the bank is not great. And now maybe with a pause, he can grab that infestation pit, but that was a very scary moment for Serral. And with Clem actually taking a 4th base, I guess the game will go on. I kind of have a tough time saying who won out, but it feels like Clem did. Just with, he's going to have 3-3 on the way soon. Serral's nowhere near the hive. And this run-by could do some damage as well. Yes,
Serral's run-by is run on in. Ooh, catches Clem when he's not quite paying attention, so full wraparound with the lings. The Baneling connect on those Marines. Finds a few of the SCVs, maybe not as many as he was potentially about to find, but still 7 workers worth of damage. Kills off actually a decent chunk of army supply as well, so at least does trade out.
Yeah, I guess trade might be a good way to put it. Some more Marines, some SCVs. Definitely wanted some more, though, and Serral is now going to have to once again defend his 4th base, and he's got a 5th base up to the top left, so if he sacrifices without losing army, it could be recoverable, but he really wants to keep it alive. That creep spread is only just now being replanted. Going to take a tank while he can and try and retreat with the banelings. Actually, some really good mic has been going down that I'll get into later, but Ling run by this time actually finding a lot of success.
Lings are going to find a ton of damage, but that also means that's that many more lings that are not here to help defend this base. So Serral has to get some damage done over there and accept that this fight might be a little bit harder to take, especially as soon as these banelings run off of creep. But the lings come in for the flank from behind. Get some good baneling connections there, force a massive liftoff, and still shut down mining on this base for at least a period of time. So really, really nice set of plays there from Serral.
Yeah, that was a really good defense. I mean, Clem's not going to immediately lose the game, but he just lost all of his momentum. You know, he didn't save as many Marines as he probably could have had he picked up sooner. But then he also just, the initial problem with that fight was that he got so, on top of the creep, so forward with his Marines, is that when he retreated, it wasn't into an arc. He didn't fan out his Marines. He didn't have time to, so there's no way he's going to take a good engagement with the Lings collapsing in on him and the Banelings still being available, right? And now he's got to try and take a better engagement. Tanks are sieging up. There's a decent number of them up a ramp off creep. Yeah, maybe be a little bit careful there, Serral.
Yeah, there's 2 siege tanks on the left-hand side really save his bacon, but over here we have another one of these Ling run-bys. Getting so much damage on the command center, actually down into the burning. Is going to have to be repaired back up by those SCVs, but the Lings still around, able to continue to harass this location, even with a handful of Marines and siege tanks coming out. Serral is just finding so much consistent damage from that angle of attack.
Yeah, it's such a cut in momentum, man. Clem has that 3-2. He's got the +3 attack, which is most important. His army's still kind of good, but Serral did manage to get up to his own upgrades, did manage to get up to that hive tech, and is now even reaching towards a 6th base at the top left, which Clem has something up there, going to try and, it's a liberator, so a little bit of harassment, but it is so much more about the main engagements. Another huge Ling run by, there's only a single tank there, that's not going to be enough. Oh, actually it is, Serral just runs away from it. Well, all right then.
He's like, you left forces here this time, I will respect it. Those Lings coming in for a surround on the left-hand side. It looks like Serral wants to set up for a 2-sided attack, but look at how insanely wide this spread is over here from Clem. Is it going to end up being enough? Now finally coming in off of creep. A lot of these Banelings going to get picked off on the retreat as well. There are 6 Banelings left over, but a lot of Marines still here for Clem, and Serral has to evacuate this base, maybe? Yeah, he's going to abandon it.
Yeah, that's a smart call. That was like the exact opposite type of fight than what I was describing, right? That was all types of spread out. Sometimes it can backfire, actually, like your units aren't all firing together, right? But that time it was perfect. Serral forced to respect it, giving up his base, now even giving maybe this base up. You know, the creeps will eventually diminish, and then that's going to make it even tougher to hold on to. Clem's going to have to run away again, awkwardly, all bulked up, and then try and take a concave. No, focus firing down the banelings. Nope, can't do it. Forced to lift off, especially with the tanks and being able to help out. The blinding cloud did go down, but Clem now going into multitasking mode, has an attack off to the left. It is a very odd attack, but an attack nonetheless.
Marines on death's doorstep, gonna try and make something happen, but reinforcements have arrived, are able to get out a bit more damage done. The siege tank gets cleaned up though, and the Marines are gonna get forced to back off. 3 drones get killed there, but at the end of the day, Clem was maybe hoping for a bit more damage. He's coming in along that right-hand side yet again. Like you said, it's about multitasking right now. Hits in, finds a handful of the drones. There's no banelings over here this time. There are only 6 banelings left out on the map. There are more Marines than there are Zerglings, and he goes up to the main base. The Hydrating got sniped off earlier. Oh, suddenly Serral's in a very awkward spot.
Yeah, he really needs time to utilize the top left bases. He needs to build up his army again. He's going to finish his 3-3 upgrade, so his army's kind of good when it can actually fight, but the multitasking is going to be a real test. Clem finally cleans up some very aggressively placed creep tumors, so now he has control over the left side. He's going to be pushing and defending his expansions, which is really terrifying for a Zerg player who's not all together yet. Serral needs to be maxed out, needs to have all his technology, needs to have his Vipers, right, actually getting some decent blinding clouds. And look at that, even using the building armor and the needle steel frames, was it? Like, he got combined a while ago. Those bunkers coming down the front line are gonna have extra capacity.
Intentional upgrade, Zombie-Craft. He knew it was for this moment, right
Obviously.
here. Well, we got, of course, Clem pushing forward on just this left-hand side. Is actually even taken any of the units he had on the right and just moved them to this side. It's not about multitask harassment anymore. It is about hitting hard on this one side. He's on the edge of creep though, so he's gonna have to back off. The siege tanks all get sniped off. The bunkers finally finish up right at the end of that fight, but this Ling run by, finding 16 workers worth of damage and still active, still trying to find more damage. Really, really nice job by Serral again.
Even just a handful of Lings when they're cracklings will completely demolish an SCD line. So that was a fairly brutal blow, but that's after Clem has built 2 extra command centers. That is his lifted orbital on the left side there, but he is actually playing to a strong macro game. The right side scan's going to reveal maybe a drop location. He doesn't want Serral to get either side of the map, actually. He wants to only be focusing on the left, forcing Serral to sweat towards his last couple of bases. If Serral were to take over the right side, then maybe he once again could give up the bases and not be dead for it. So he's going to take the engagement. Instead, blinding clouds go down, but it's still off creep, up a ramp into bunkers that are reinforced. Oh God. So I don't think Serral's going to actually break that.
Amazingly enough, yeah, it's just Serral not being able to break that upward position, but he's finding so much damage with these Ling run-bys. My God, he has kept himself in this game and pulled himself out of some really tough spots so many times this game with these Ling run-bys. That has absolutely been the big MVP play there for Serral repeatedly.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, especially these last 2, right? That's a lot of SCVs to lose, and what Clem could have replaced them. I don't actually think he was. He's certainly not doing it now. He's really missing a bank despite his economy being okay. I guess all of the interruptions in the mining as well really contributing to that lack of bank. And this isn't supposed to happen, by the way. Like, he's supposed to be defending and pushing, but he's just that, that much farther away than he needs to be to defend the orbital.
I almost wish that he had like a bunker at one of those bases with like 2 Marines inside or something, the armored bunker to at least hold off a little bit so he doesn't just immediately take damage like this, but I don't even know if that would actually be enough.
Oh, he left a large portion of his units at home, but they actually just got distracted. Like the medevacs and the Marines went off to the left, so that little force was taken out by the Lings. Really nicely done by Serral. Clem's still eager to push into the top left. He's taking one base down. He wants the other one, but he has to focus on so many places at once. He's actually just going to tap out.